When a narcissistic man is secretly attracted, the way he greets you is rarely accidental. It isn't just a hi tossed into the air and forgotten. It's measured, it's deliberate, and most importantly, it carries a kind of emotional charge that feels different from how he greets everyone else. Not louder, not necessarily more enthusiastic, but more focused. There's intention behind it, and intention is the giveaway. You'll often notice this in the pacing. He may slow the moment down slightly. He holds eye contact just a beat longer than necessary, or lets a pause sit before speaking, as if he wants the greeting to land rather than pass by. That pause isn't awkward, it's calculated. Psychologically, pauses create significance. They signal this moment matters without ever saying it out loud. And for someone who wants to stay in control, subtlety is safer than confession. Tone plays a major role here. His voice may soften, lower, or become more deliberate when he greets you. Not overtly flirtatious, not obvious enough to risk rejection, but different enough that you feel it. Narcissistic men are often highly attuned to how they come across. They know that attraction isn't always built through words, it's built through atmosphere. The greeting becomes a way to create that atmosphere without revealing vulnerability. What's crucial to understand is that this greeting isn't about warmth alone. Plenty of people are warm. This is about selective presence. He may appear distracted with others, casual, even disengaged, but when it comes to you, his attention narrows. For a moment, you have the spotlight, and that contrast is powerful. It makes you feel chosen without ever being chosen explicitly. Philosophically, this is where narcissistic attraction diverges from healthy attraction. A healthy man greets you openly because he wants connection. A narcissistic man greets you strategically because he wants impact. He wants the interaction to register, to linger, to create curiosity. He wants you to walk away thinking about how it felt, not necessarily about what was said. This is also why the greeting often feels charged but unresolved. There's interest but no clarity, presence but no direction. That ambiguity is not confusion, it's leverage. When attraction is hinted at but not owned, it pulls the other person into interpretation mode, and interpretation keeps you engaged. It keeps you wondering. For someone who thrives on being psychologically central, that's the goal. It's important to say this clearly. None of this means you should distrust every meaningful greeting or moment of eye contact. Context matters. Patterns matter. What you're watching for is consistency paired with restraint. Does he greet you with focus but avoid follow-through? Does he create intensity in small moments while staying non-committal overall? That's when this behavior becomes telling. Your power in these moments comes from awareness. When you recognize that a charged greeting is not the same as genuine openness, you stop over-investing in potential and start observing behavior as information. You don't rush to fill the space he creates. You don't assume depth where there is only design. The deeper truth is this: attraction that is healthy moves toward clarity. Attraction that is narcissistic lingers in suggestion. So when a greeting feels meaningful, as when a narcissistic man greets you, he isn't just saying hello, he's observing what that hello does to you. This is where the greeting quietly shifts from expression to experiment. His attention is not only on delivering a moment, but on measuring its effect. Does your energy lift? Do you lean in slightly? Does your mood brighten in a way that signals his presence carries weight? These reactions matter to him more than the greeting itself. Psychologically, narcissistic men are often oriented around influence. They want to know early on whether they can shape the emotional climate of an interaction. A greeting becomes a low-risk way to test this. He might offer warmth one day and neutrality the next, just enough variation to see if you notice. If his friendliness noticeably changes how you show up, if you become more animated, more eager, more attentive, he registers that as emotional leverage. What's subtle about this is that it doesn't look like manipulation on the surface. It looks like charm, it looks like confidence, but underneath, there's a constant calibration happening. He's learning whether his attention feels scarce or abundant to you, whether it stabilizes you or excites you, whether its presence or absence changes your behavior. If it does, the dynamic begins to tilt. This is why narcissistic attraction often feels intense very quickly. It's not just chemistry, it's feedback. The more your response confirms his impact, the more invested he becomes in maintaining that position of influence. And influence for him often feels safer than intimacy. Control feels more predictable than vulnerability. Philosophically, this reveals an important distinction between connection and power. Connection asks, how do we meet? Power asks, how do you respond to me? A healthy greeting is offered freely, without expectation. A narcissistic greeting is offered with curiosity about outcome. It's less about sharing a moment and more about testing one. You may notice this when the greeting itself becomes inconsistent. Some days it's warm and engaging, other days it's brief or distant. This inconsistency is not random. It's a way of checking whether you adjust. Do you try harder when he pulls back? Do you soften your boundaries when his energy drops? If so, the greeting has successfully established a subtle hierarchy, his attention at the top, your response beneath it. This doesn't mean you should become guarded or perform emotional detachment. It means you should remain self-referenced. Notice your own internal state. Ask yourself whether his presence adds to your groundedness or disrupts it. Attraction that pulls you off center is different from attraction that feels expansive. What's powerful is that narcissistic men are often disarmed by emotional steadiness. When a woman receives a greeting warmly but does not emotionally spike, when she stays consistent regardless of tone or timing, the test yields no data. There's no leverage to grab onto. The interaction becomes mutual rather than hierarchical. And here's the deeper truth. Someone who is truly interested in connection doesn't need to measure their effect on you. They're too busy enjoying the exchange. When a greeting feels like it's carrying a hidden agenda, to provoke, to hook, to matter, it's worth paying attention. So rather than asking, what did his greeting mean? A better question is, what did it do to me? Did it leave you grounded, or did it pull you into anticipation? Did it feel open, or did it create tension you felt compelled to resolve? That awareness restores your agency. You stop being the audience to his performance and become the observer of the dynamic itself. Care yourself not how it made you feel, but where it's leading one. Of the most psychologically telling things a narcissistic man does when he's secretly attracted is create contrast between you and everyone else through the way he greets you. This contrast is rarely loud. In fact, the more subtle it is, the more effective it becomes. He understands that being obvious risks exposure, but being different plants a question mark. And question marks keep people engaged. You might notice that his greeting to you feels more personal even if it's quieter. Maybe he uses your name when he doesn't use others. Maybe he references something you shared previously, even in passing. Or perhaps it's the opposite. He's more restrained with you, more controlled, less casual than he is with everyone else. That restraint is not disinterest. It's containment. He's separating you from the group by treating you as an exception, even if the exception isn't immediately flattering. Psychologically, contrast creates significance. When someone's behavior toward you doesn't match their behavior toward others, your brain naturally tries to resolve the difference. You begin to wonder what it means, why it's happening, and whether it signals something deeper. A narcissistic man relies on this reflex. He doesn't need to declare attraction if he can make you feel singled out. What's important here is that the contrast is not necessarily warmer, it's more intentional. He may be playful and relaxed with others, but focused and intense with you. Or he may be charming with everyone, but suddenly more serious, more attentive, more deliberate when you enter the interaction. Either way, the shift is designed to register. From a philosophical perspective, this is where attraction subtly merges with manipulation. Healthy attraction moves toward transparency. It doesn't require comparison to be felt. Narcissistic attraction often depends on comparison because it reinforces hierarchy. If you feel different, special, or distinct, it elevates his role as the one who assigns that distinction. This is also why the greeting can feel meaningful without being grounding. You sense that you matter, but you're not sure how or why. The lack of clarity keeps you mentally engaged. You replay interactions, you analyze tone, you look for consistency. All of that mental energy deepens attachment without any real emotional investment on his part. You may also notice that this contrast fluctuates. Some days you're clearly the focus, other days you're treated like everyone else, or even slightly less. That inconsistency is not confusion, it's calibration. He's observing how sensitive you are to shifts in status. Do you notice when the contrast disappears? Do you try to regain it? If so, the dynamic tightens. The danger here isn't that contrast exists. It's that it replaces clarity. When being different becomes more important than being respected, attraction starts to orbit around approval rather than connection. You begin to measure your value based on how uniquely you're treated instead of how securely you're met. What breaks this pattern is not confrontation, but self-equality. When you stop reading meaning into contrast and start valuing consistency, the spell weakens. A grounded response, warm but unchanged, engaged but not reactive, signals that you don't require special treatment to feel secure. That alone often disrupts the dynamic. Someone genuinely interested will eventually want to move from contrast to consistency. They won't want you guessing where you stand. Someone invested in control will keep the contrast alive because it keeps you attentive. So pay attention not just to how differently he greets you, but to what that difference asks of you. Does it invite openness, or does it invite interpretation? Does it make you feel seen or subtly evaluated? Another subtle but powerful sign appears when a narcissistic man begins to weave familiarity and implied closeness into the greeting far earlier than the relationship has earned. This is not intimacy in the true sense. It's symbolic intimacy. He uses small cues to create the feeling of an established bond before one actually exists. You might notice this in the way he uses your name more often than necessary, or in how he references shared moments that were minor but are framed as meaningful. He may greet you with an inside joke, a knowing look, or a tone that suggests, "We're already in something together." None of this is overtly inappropriate. In fact, it often feels flattering, but psychologically, it serves a very specific purpose. It accelerates emotional familiarity without emotional investment. For narcissistic men, this kind of early familiarity is a shortcut. Real intimacy requires mutual vulnerability, patience, and consistency. Symbolic intimacy requires only performance. By greeting you as if there's already a bond, he invites you to emotionally step into a role that hasn't been consciously chosen. You begin to feel connected before you've had the chance to assess whether the connection is healthy or reciprocal. From a psychological standpoint, the brain responds strongly to cues of belonging. When someone treats us as if we are already close, we instinctively want to live up to that closeness. We become more open, more forgiving, more accommodating, often without realizing why. A narcissistic man is highly attuned to this effect. He understands that if you feel in, you're less likely to question pace, consistency, or depth. This is where the greeting becomes more than a greeting. It becomes a positioning tool. He's not just saying hello, he's subtly placing you inside a narrative. A narrative where there's shared understanding, mutual significance, and an implied exclusivity. But because none of this has been explicitly discussed, it remains emotionally binding while staying logically undefined. Philosophically, this creates a dangerous illusion, the feeling of closeness without the protection of clarity. Healthy attraction builds familiarity gradually, in proportion to trust and shared experience. Narcissistic attraction often front-loads familiarity to create attachment before discernment has a chance to catch up. It feels good quickly, but it lacks structural integrity. You may notice that this early familiarity isn't always matched by reliability. The greeting feels warm, personal, even intimate, but follow-through may be inconsistent. Plans remain vague. Emotional availability fluctuates. When that happens, the mind tries to resolve the mismatch by leaning harder into the feeling of connection that's already been established. And that's where self-betrayal can begin. The key is not to reject warmth or connection, but to anchor it in reality. Ask yourself, does the level of familiarity match the level of investment? Does the sense of us reflect shared effort or just shared moments? When familiarity runs ahead of behavior, it's a signal to slow down, not lean in. A grounded response here doesn't require confrontation. It requires pacing. You can receive the greeting warmly without emotionally stepping ahead of what's been built. You can enjoy the moment without assigning it meaning it hasn't earned. This quiet self-regulation often reveals intentions very quickly. Someone genuine will meet you where you are. Someone manipulative will push for you to move faster. As the interaction unfolds, a narcissistic man uses the greeting as an opportunity to quietly assess your boundaries, not by asking for permission, but by watching why allow. This is where the greeting becomes a diagnostic tool. Small choices in proximity, tone, teasing, or conversational depth aren't random, they're probes. He's learning where the edges are and whether those edges hold. You might notice a step closer than necessary, a light tease that lands just on the line between playful and personal, or a question that moves quickly into emotional territory. None of it is overt enough to demand a response, and that's intentional. The goal isn't to cross a boundary outright, it's to see if one exists. If you laugh it off, explain yourself, or accommodate to keep things smooth, he records that information. If you pause, redirect, or calmly hold your pace, he records that too. Psychologically, narcissistic men are attentive to friction. Friction tells them how much resistance they'll face later. If the greeting includes a joke at your expense and you join in despite discomfort, that's a signal. If it includes familiarity you didn't invite and you go along with it, that's another. He's not judging you morally, he's evaluating the landscape. Boundaries to him are not expressions of self-respect, they're obstacles to be mapped. What makes this tricky is that boundary testing often masquerades as confidence or charm. Society teaches us to reward ease, to be agreeable, to not make things awkward. Narcissistic men leverage this. They rely on the fact that many people will override their instincts to maintain social harmony. Over time, those small overrides teach him something powerful, that your comfort can be negotiated. Philosophically, this is where attraction intersects with agency. Healthy attraction respects the other person's rhythm. It adjusts when it meets resistance. Narcissistic attraction presses just enough to see whether it can reshape the rhythm to its advantage. The greeting is the first beat of that music. If you let it set the tempo without your consent, the rest of the dance follows. It's important to understand that holding boundaries doesn't require confrontation or coldness. It's often as simple as a pause, a neutral smile, a change of subject, or a gentle "not just yet." These responses aren't defensive, they're informative. They say, "I'm present," and I'm also self-directed. For someone interested in connection, that's reassuring. For someone interested in control, it's limiting. You may notice that when boundaries are clear, the greeting changes. It may become more respectful and consistent, or it may lose its intensity altogether. Both outcomes are revealing. If interest deepens in a grounded way, that's a sign of compatibility. If intensity evaporates or escalates into pressure, that's information too. What often keeps people stuck is the belief that chemistry requires flexibility. But real chemistry doesn't ask you to ignore yourself. It doesn't require you to trade comfort for connection. The body knows when something is off long before the mind admits it. The greeting is often where the body speaks first. So instead of asking whether the greeting felt exciting, ask whether it felt safe. Not boring safe, but grounded safe. Did you feel more yourself afterward or slightly edited? Did you feel respected in your pace or subtly rushed to match his? The most revealing aspect of how a narcissistic man greets a woman he's secretly attracted to is that the greeting is designed to linger, not to lead. It's crafted to stay with you after the moment ends, to echo in your thoughts, to invite interpretation rather than clarity. This is not accidental. It's the culmination of everything that has come before. The intention, the testing, the contrast, the familiarity, the boundary probes, all converging into an interaction meant to hook attention without offering direction. Why? All might walk away replaying his tone, the look he gave you, or the way the moment felt slightly charged yet unfinished. There's no clear invitation, no expressed interest, no next step, just a sense of something there. For a narcissistic man, this is ideal. When attraction lives in your mind rather than in mutual action, he remains central without having to risk vulnerability. Psychologically, this works because the human brain is wired to seek closure. When an interaction feels incomplete, we naturally return to it, filling in the gaps with imagination. A narcissistic man leverages this tendency. By keeping the greeting emotionally evocative but practically ambiguous, he ensures continued mental presence. You're thinking about him, he hasn't had to do anything more. This is where many people confuse depth with mystery. They interpret the lingering feeling as a sign of emotional complexity or unspoken connection. But depth is revealed through consistency, effort, and follow-through. Mystery without movement is not depth, it's suspension. And suspension keeps power on one side of the dynamic. From a philosophical perspective, this reveals a core difference between attraction rooted in authenticity and attraction rooted in control. Authentic attraction moves toward embodiment. It wants to be lived, expressed, tested in reality. Narcissistic attraction often prefers abstraction. It thrives in implication, in half signals, in moments that feel meaningful but never materialize into something solid. The cost of staying in that abstraction is self-disconnection. When a greeting becomes something you analyze more than you experience, when it pulls you into fantasy rather than grounding you in the present, you begin to invest emotionally without reciprocal evidence. Over time, this can quietly erode self-trust. You stop asking, is this good for me? And start asking, what? Does it mean? The antidote to this is not skepticism, it's directional awareness. Ask yourself where the interaction is moving. Does the greeting lead to consistency? Does it open space for clarity? Does it bring your life more peace or more mental noise? Attraction that is healthy may feel exciting, but it doesn't keep you suspended. It integrates into your life rather than pulling you out of yourself. A grounded response to a lingering greeting is simple presence. You receive the moment without chasing it. You enjoy what's there without assigning it a future it hasn't earned. You let behavior, not tone, not chemistry, not suggestion, determine meaning. This shifts the dynamic immediately. Someone who wants control may intensify or withdraw. Someone who wants connection will step forward. Ultimately, how someone greets you matters less than what follows. A greeting is a doorway, not a destination. When it becomes the main event, something is missing.